All right, welcome to another deep dive. This one's specifically for those of you out there getting ready for the UPSC, especially those who have chosen international relations as their optional. Now, we're going to be talking about someone you might not expect, Thomas Kuhn. Yeah, see Kuhn's work. All about how those scientific fields, how they grow and change, can actually give you a real edge when you're trying to understand those, well, dense IR theories,
Yeah.
and trying to make sense of everything happening globally.
It's fascinating to think that Kuhn wasn't even a political scientist. His background was in physics and the history of
Oh,
science.
wow.
But the ideas that he had, they've had a huge influence on how we think about, well, creating knowledge across so many different fields, even the very way we study politics.
Okay, I get that he was influential, but why should someone getting ready to the UPSC, someone focused on IR, why should they care about a physicist? What's the big takeaway?
Well, the key idea from Kuhn is this thing called a paradigm. It's like, think of it as a shared set of beliefs and theories, even methods, used by a scientific community. But it's not just about facts. It's about how those facts are, well, interpreted, and even what questions we think are important.
Wait, so even something that seems pretty objective, like analyzing data in political science, you're saying that can be influenced by, like, trends. How does that even happen?
Imagine fashion trends. What's in style completely changes over the years, right? Bell bottoms, they were huge, and then, well, they weren't, and now I think they're kind of back. That's a mini paradigm shift right there. But for a more serious example, think about the change from Newtonian physics to, well, Einstein's theory of relativity. Now, that was a massive paradigm shift. It completely transformed how we understand gravity, the universe even.
Okay, I see what you're getting at. So Kuhn's saying that even those basic ideas in political science, they aren't set in stone. It's like realizing the map you're using to understand the world, someone's always redrawing it.
Exactly. And to really get how these changes happen, Kuhn outlined 4 phases of, well, scientific development. The first phase, the pre-paradigmatic phase, that's where you have lots of ideas competing. No one theory is really in charge. It's like the early days of political science. A bunch of thinkers, all with different approaches, no clear winner yet.
Sounds like a recipe for, well, some intense academic debates.
Yeah.
So how do we go from all that intellectual free-for-all to something more organized?
Well, out of that chaos, one school of thought, it becomes dominant. That's when you move into the paradigmatic phase. This, well, dominant paradigm, it sets the research agenda, it decides what questions are important, it even influences how data is interpreted. A perfect example in political science is the rise of behavioralism. This approach, it emphasizes scientific methods, observable behavior. It really dominated the field for a good while.
Are you saying that behavioralism, with all that focus on data and measurements, it was like the bell bottoms of political science?
Yeah.
Super popular for a while, but then...
That's a great analogy. But just like any trend, even those dominant paradigms, they run into problems. This is what Kuhn called the crisis phase. Anomalies start popping up, contradictions. The current paradigm can't explain everything. And that's what happened with behavioralism. People argued that it was, well, too narrow, too focused on methods and not enough on substance. Couldn't handle all the details of power dynamics, historical context, or how complex political beliefs can be.
Things start to get interesting here.
Uh-huh.
The old ways are fading, something new's coming. Is this leading to what Kuhn called a scientific revolution?
You got it. This is where a new paradigm comes in, tries to fix the problems of the old one, often builds on it, but also challenges it. But here's where things get a bit tricky with political science. Unlike physics, where you had that huge jump from Newton to Einstein, political science hasn't had one single, universally accepted revolution.
That is really interesting. So no political science version of, like, Einstein's relativity to shake everything up. Why do you think that is?
One major political theorist, Sheldon Woolen, he argued that, well, political science, it's really tied to the bigger ideological paradigm of the society, basically societal values, what's happening politically, even cultural trends, they all affect how we study politics. It's not like purely objective and scientific in the same way that physics tries to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. The questions we ask about power or legitimacy, even the role of the state, they all come from the world we live in.
Yeah.
But let's get back to those UPSC folks prepping for the exam. What happened after behavioralism, when it started to lose its shine as the main paradigm? Did political science just fall back into, like, total chaos?
Not chaos exactly, but definitely lots of new approaches popped up, each with its own pluses and minuses. There was a big push for policy-oriented research, using political science to solve real-world problems, and theories like rational choice came about, trying to explain political behavior as people just acting in their own best interests, making strategic decisions.
Okay, so instead of one big paradigm, we've got a bunch of approaches all competing. How does this connect to what we see in international relations?
That's the million-dollar question. This is where Kuhn's ideas really matter for those of you studying for the UPSC, especially that IR section. By getting how paradigms shape the field, you can start to see the strengths and weaknesses of, well, different IR theories.
Now you're talking. Realism, liberalism, constructivism, they all give you a different way of looking at the world. But it's hard to say that one is, like, clearly the boss, especially with everything so complex globally these days.
That's a great point, and it shows how dynamic IR is as a field. You could say that for a long time, realism was the top dog, focused on state power and national interest, especially during the Cold War. It helped us understand the global power game back then.
Right. Back then, everything seemed like a power struggle between the superpowers,
Yeah.
like a zero-sum game. But it's gotten a lot more complicated since then.
For sure. The Cold War ending, globalization, all those non-state actors popping up, they really challenged the basic ideas of traditional realism. This made space for things like liberalism, which emphasizes working together, international institutions, and the potential for, well, positive sum outcomes.
And then you have constructivism, which says that even things like state interests and identities are all like made up by society. It's like a whole new way of thinking about international relations.
You got it. Constructivism reminds us that it's not just about who has the most weapons and money. Ideas, norms, what people believe in, those matter too. Think about human rights becoming so important, or the global movement to fight climate change. These are strong forces influencing countries, things traditional realism might have trouble explaining.
So it seems like we're in this really interesting, maybe a little overwhelming time where different paradigms are all hanging out together, even like mixing with each other, almost like we're back in Kuhn's pre-paradigmatic phase, at least when it comes to IR. So how's someone studying for the UPSC supposed to navigate all this?
That's where your deep dive into Kuhn really pays off. See, by understanding these different paradigms, you're not just memorizing stuff for the exam, you're developing this, well, critical lens to analyze what's happening globally. That's what the UPSC examiners are looking for.
So instead of trying to figure out the right paradigm, I should be asking, what can I learn from each one? What do they miss? And how can I use all these different views to analyze, a specific international event or problem?
Exactly. And here's something else to think about as you keep studying IR. Even though there's no one paradigm calling the shots right now, could there be one forming? What global trends or challenges might lead to a whole new way of thinking about international relations?
That's a great question. Think about AI becoming so powerful, the climate crisis, the changing balance of power around the world. Any of those could change how we think about international relations.
That's right. And that's what makes studying international relations so exciting. It's always changing, challenging us to, well, think critically and keep learning about the world.
I'm definitely seeing those IR theories differently now. And it's making me think more carefully about, the arguments they make and the assumptions they have.
That's exactly the point. We want you to come away from this deep dive not just with, facts and figures, but with a way to understand how knowledge itself, is created and challenged.
This has been super helpful. So, to everyone listening who's prepping for the UPSC, this is where the real work starts. What do you think is the main paradigm in IR these days? Is there even one? What might the next paradigm shift look like? Think about how understanding Kuhn's paradigms can help you break down theories like realism or liberalism. What are they assuming? That's the kind of critical thinking that will make you stand out in the UPSC exam. And while you're thinking about these big questions, don't forget to, hit that like button and subscribe to the deep dive. We've got more of these thought-provoking explorations into all sorts of knowledge. And hey, if these deep dives are helping you get ready for the UPSC, spread the word. Share them with your fellow aspirants. Trust me, when you're in that pressure cooker of the UPSC exam, really understanding the ideas, not just memorizing, that's what will make the difference.
Absolutely. That ability to, analyze, critique, connect ideas to really show you've mastered a subject, that's how you do well on an exam like the UPSC.
It's all about getting the why, not just the what. And that's what we're all about here on the deep dive.
So keep those questions coming, keep exploring, and keep pushing yourselves intellectually. International relations, it's always changing. And the best way to stay ahead, embrace that lifelong learning journey.
Well said. So to all our listeners, especially those on that UPSC path, go out there and take apart some theories. Good luck on your journey, and let us know how Kuhn helps you ace those IR questions. Until next time, keep diving deep.